Namaskar and welcome to Diplomatic Dispatch with me, Vikas Swarup. This is a show in which we bring you expert analysis of all the major happenings on the diplomatic front. But we also provide you insights on all that goes on behind the scenes in diplomacy. Today's show also tackles one of these nuts and bolts issues, something very critical and crucial for the proper conduct of diplomacy, the safety and security of Indian diplomatic premises and personnel abroad. The Government of India takes the security of Indian embassies and consulates around the world very seriously. This includes safeguarding the premises as well as safety and security of the Indian officials posted at these embassies and consulates and their families. A number of security measures are put in place for this purpose, such as security personnel, surveillance systems, and physical barriers to prevent unauthorized access. However, because these embassies and consulates function abroad, the risk of attacks and security breaches can never be completely eliminated, and diplomatic missions remain potential targets for terrorist groups and other hostile actors. Mr. K.S. Pillai, who joined the first batch of the Indian Foreign Service in 1948, fell to a deranged assassin's bullet as he worked on his desk at the High Commission of India in Ottawa on the 19th of April 1961. Mr. Ravindra Mahatre, an Indian diplomat posted as the Consul General of India in Birmingham, was abducted from outside his residence by members of the terrorist group Babbar Khalsa International on 3rd February 1984, and his body was found 2 days later. In 2008, the Indian Embassy in Kabul was attacked by a suicide bomber belonging to the Lashkar-e-Toiba, killing 58 people, including IFS officer V. Venkateshwar Rao and the Defence Attaché Brigadier Ravidat Mehta. Another incident occurred in 2014 when 2 gunmen attacked the Indian consulate in Herat. All Indian officials and staff were safely evacuated and 3 gunmen were killed in the attack. Terrorists also attacked the Indian consulates in Mazar-e-Sharif and Jalalabad, resulting in casualties. In addition to these attacks, there have been incidents of vandalism at Indian embassies and consulates in many other countries. In January 2021, Khalistan elements vandalized the Indian embassy in Rome ahead of India's Republic Day celebrations. In August last year, miscreants painted Khalistan slogans on the walls of the Indian consulate in San Francisco. In recent months, Indian embassies and establishments have come under increasing attack by Khalistan sympathizers across several countries, including the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, and Australia. Khalistani extremists again tried to forcibly enter the Indian consulate in San Francisco and defaced the walls. In London, a violent mob attacked the Indian High Commission and took down the Indian tricolour. In February this year, Australia had to shut down the Indian consulate in Brisbane after Khalistani extremists blocked the entrance. In Washington, D.C., Khalistani supporters desecrated Mahatma Gandhi's statue, which stands right outside the Indian embassy. Khalistani extremists have also been targeting the Indian High Commission in Ottawa and Indian consulates in Canada, even breaching the security of the post on some occasions. India has formally raised the matter with these governments at the highest levels, asking them to take stringent action against these miscreants. But these incidents do highlight the threat that Indian embassies and consulates face worldwide. So what are the norms and rules governing the security of diplomatic premises, and how do we ensure that the sanctity of these premises is not violated? To provide the answers, I have with me 2 eminent experts who have first-hand experience of dealing with these issues. With me in the studio is Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1977 and held key appointments in a long and distinguished diplomatic career. He served as High Commissioner to Bangladesh, an ambassador to Thailand, and Secretary Economic Relations in New Delhi, besides being India's Chief of Protocol from 2002 to 2006. Joining us from Patna is Mr. Sunil Kumar Sinha, an IPS officer of the 1983 batch who served in various capacities, including in the IB and the Special Protection Group, which looks after the security of the Prime Minister. He was deputed to the Ministry of External Affairs from 2013 to 2015 as Joint Secretary Pers, in which capacity he was responsible for security of Indian missions abroad. He is presently a member of the Central Administrative Tribunal, Patna Bench. A very warm welcome to the show, gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Chakravarty. Now, the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961 offered certain protections to the premises of a mission. What are these protections? But first, what is the Vienna Convention?
Well, as you know, ambassadors and envoys in olden times were often slaughtered when they went to deliver a message. The movie Gladiator, if you remember, had this headless body of the ambassador being on horseback. Anyway, that used to be in the past. But after the Second World War, when a new system, new regimes were being created globally, that was when it was thought that it's high time to have, and under the UN aegis, of course, high time that we have, formulate and put down in writing a treaty that would make states responsible for observing certain norms, etc. And that is how the Vienna Convention of Diplomatic Relations came about in 1961. And then the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations also followed, I think in 62. So that is how it came into being, and almost all the countries of the UN are signatories of, and they have been ratified by almost every country. So these are the, what shall we say, one of the pillars of the international order, that this is how we have to behave in while dealing with nation states, while sending ambassadors, while they open the embassies, to make sure we provide the protection that is required, which is all enshrined in the Vienna Convention.
So what are these protections?
Well, Article 22 particularly lays down very, very clearly that the receiving state, as they are called, that is, if it is India which is hosting an embassy, then India as the receiving, must provide almost foolproof, although the word is not there, protection to the premises. And any government which does not do so is in violation of the Vienna Convention. And the incidents that you mentioned are clear violations, because local authorities are supposed to provide the necessary protection.
And Indian diplomatic premises abroad are supposed to be inviolable. They
Absolutely.
are supposed to be Indian territory.
Absolutely.
Actually.
It's very clearly mentioned that you cannot enter the premises without the permission of the head of the mission. So that is how it is recorded in the Vienna Convention. And there is, of course, it's very, very clear, and there is no mitigating circumstance there, that it can happen or something.
No exceptions are provided.
No exceptions are provided.
Mr. Sinha, now you have dealt with the security of Indian missions as Joint Secretary Pers. What are the various factors that determine the security threat to our interests in a particular country?
We take overall security situation in the country, whether there is an insurgency going on in the country, whether there is armed rebellion in the country, whether there is an effective government in the country, because it is an effective government only which can its responsibility cast upon it by the Vienna Convention. We had to shift our embassies from Libya in 2015 to Tunisia, and from Yemen to Djibouti, because the security situation deteriorated considerably at that time. Also, we have to take into consideration whether there are armed rebellion groups operating in the country. What is their area of operation? What is their capability? What is their orientation? What is their demand? And what is their orientation towards our country? These are important factors which we have to take into consideration. Third factor is, where does that country stand in the index of criminality, in the global criminality index? Countries like Papua New Guinea, Venezuela, South Africa are very high on this criminality index. And our missions, some of our diplomatic agents have been targets of criminal assaults in these countries. So we have to take into consideration even the criminality index while working out the security threat to the country. Fourth aspect is, what is the capability of the police and security agencies of that country? Whether police and security agencies are well equipped, well trained, and well-oriented and motivated to deal with such situations. Fifth is, what is the relationship of our government or our country with the host country? What kind of relationship is there? And lastly, which is the very important, is the presence of hostile elements, terrorist groups which are hostile to our country, and they are present in that country, in the host country. And what kind of relationship or what kind of action the host country is taking against them. These are some of the factors broadly which decide what is the security threat and how should we plan our security measures in that country for the security and protection of our mission premises and diplomatic agents.
Very comprehensive indeed. Now, Ambassador Chakravarty, let's be very clear. Who has primary responsibility for providing security to our diplomatic premises which are abroad?
Well, primarily it is the receiving state, but it is not beyond responsibility, not beyond the responsibility of the state that is being represented there to provide for its own security, but internally, because you don't have jurisdiction outside the embassy. So many embassies do that. We do it also. We post our own security officials who look after the perimeter security, internal security, while screening visitors, etc. This is done by all embassies. But primarily, it is the receiving state which is completely responsible and culpable. So anyway, if you do not, for example, provide security outside the premises and at the same time permit hostile demonstrations to take place, it is absolutely a callous disregard of duty and responsibility for the receiving state.
Mr. Sinha, given that this is the responsibility of the host country, what kind of coordination is needed with the host government to ensure adequate security for our diplomatic premises and personnel?
Coordination is an ongoing process. And every time we have some intelligence input, some information about the programs, activities of the hostile groups, we have to coordinate with the authority which is designated to share threat analysis, vulnerability analysis, and intelligence about the activities of these hostile elements. Now, once we have this coordination with the intelligence authorities of the local government, and we impress upon them the need to provide and need to communicate to the local authorities, police and security authorities, to provide adequate security measures. This is the first and important aspect of coordination. Second, coordination is required at the local police level. The ground level police and security authority, which is there on the street or on just outside our embassy premises, whether they are able to provide physical features, ropes, chains, and put some police personnel to segregate the persons who have a genuine reason to come to mission from the persons who do not have any reason to come to the mission, or who do not have any, who are just bystanders. So we need to, there is a requirement that this coordination is has to be done and is done at the level of local police level. Third is, we often have kind of National Day functions when we have large gatherings. We have Independence Day, Republic Day functions, and we get large number of guests. At that time also, our mission requires support from and assistance from the local police and security agencies in traffic management, providing parking space, etc., and regulating the people to the mission. Fourthly, we also need a coordination at the level of intelligence agencies, that they develop the intelligence input that we have shared with them and take it to the logical end, whether if there is an hostile element planning some activity, anti-India activity, the local government and local security agencies should monitor and should take necessary action against them, or should say that, no, this is not correct.
Speaking of coordination, Ambassador Chakravarty, now protocol is based on the principle of reciprocity. So how does this work when it comes to security for foreign embassies in India and our embassies abroad?
Well, it is not a strict reciprocal thing that whatever you provide, I will provide the same. It is based on threat perceptions, intelligence inputs, etc. For example, every embassy does not face a threat. For example, let me say that some embassies in Delhi, for example, do face a threat. So to them we provide greater security. We allow them certain facilities for their own security personnel to operate, not outside, but at least within the premises, to ensure that the premises are properly looked after. So that is one aspect of it. So it's not a very strict one-to-one thing. Where we perceive that there is threat to us and the local government is unwilling or not providing enough, then we have to shore up our own security by sending people from here who work inside the embassy. Now, this is what happens across the world. Now, what happens is that patrolling takes place on special occasions or where there is an intelligence input. Then people are there, sometimes even in plain clothes, to watch what's happening around the thing. So that's the kind of system that has been in operation almost across the globe. I mean, at least in countries which take this seriously and monitor it on a regular basis. One more thing I would add to this is that the location is very important. Where are you located? For example, in Delhi, they have this, we gave them these large plots, almost free, and they have built their own embassies.
In Chanakyapuri.
In Chanakyapuri, with high walls and all that. And it is easy to patrol because it's open, and so our policemen patrol the streets, etc., around the thing. And where necessary, they have static security people outside certain embassies. Not all. But then if you have your embassy in a crowded area like a residential area, many of them are, for example, in Vasant Vihar, then it becomes a bit of a problem as to how do you provide security. But even there it can be done. It's not that it cannot be done. Patrolling is done. Then of course the local police, as we say at the local Thana level, they are primed to also do the local patrolling. They talk to the embassies and to the security personnel or coordinator in the embassy and keep in touch with them as to if there is any issues to be resorted to, even a small thing like parking and things like that. They take care of that and help the embassies to do that. But the embassies also are expected to follow the rules of the country. It's not that they can, their diplomatic immunity and privileges mean that they can flout the rules of the country. So this is an understanding that most countries have. But some countries don't observe them. And some countries think that that it is their own domestic law that supersedes international law. That tendency is there among particularly Western countries. That no, our law is supersedes international law in this matter or something like that.
Now, Mr. Sinha, there must be cases where our threat perception differs from that of the host government. Is there anything we can do to supplement security if it is not provided by the local government?
We have been sending IBSs, India-based security agents, assistants, to different missions, but they essentially work as watch and ward staff for the mission. And as far I recall, in 2015, MEA had a sanction of about 340 IBSs. That was a very small number. Now, can we think of this idea has been there that can we think of utilizing the IBSs for kind of regulating the people outside the embassies who are coming for genuine reasons, for visa or for other regions? We can also use the private security guards like GS4 or things like that to supplement the role of IBSs. Now, if IBSs are adequately trained and properly equipped with non-lethal weapons, then I think they can be utilized effectively in countering and in dealing with situations which happened on 19th March in London. Ultimately, they are just preventing the people from gaining access to the premises of the mission, and they can prevent them. So there is a case that we can think of more IBSs, reorient their training and re-equip them.
Now, I believe in some missions we do post members of the paramilitary forces also, particularly, I suppose, in some of the neighboring missions. How has that worked out?
That has worked out very well. I can say that wherever our paramilitary forces are there, they have performed excellently. Be it BSF, be it CRPF, be it ITBP, they have done excellently. And you mentioned in the beginning, I'm a witness because this incident in Herat took place when I was JS and had there not been an active role played by the ITBP personnel, we do not know what would have been the consequences. The Lashkar-e-Toiba militant had entered into the premises, consulate premises, but the alert ITBP Jawan had neutralized him immediately. Wherever ITBP Jawans are deployed in Afghanistan, be it in Jalalabad, be it in Kandahar, there were several attempts to attack our missions, but none of these attacks succeeded. And in some of the cases, they blew themselves up at a distance from the mission and causing no harm to the mission. So while all these paramilitary forces have done excellently, ITBP, because it got the opportunity, has proven its mettle.
Ambassador Chakravarty, now let's turn our focus to these recent attacks by Khalistani extremists. Why are these attacks happening repeatedly? And do you see a pattern?
There is definitely a pattern. After all, unfortunately, the Indian diaspora has taken the problems that we have there, and the Khalistani issue has been there for quite some time. And I was in London and I've seen them operate at that time in the post-84, after Operation Blue Star. I was posted there. And I've seen them operate there and their demonstrations they used to mount, etc. But I never saw this kind of, attack on the High Commission. They were kept at a distance that, okay, you can demonstrate, it's your right to demonstrate. We have the same rights in India. But you cannot come to the door of the High Commission and bang it and break things, etc. That's a clear violation, as I said, of the Vienna Convention. Now, why do these things happen? Do they have any local encouragement being given? Are messages being sent to India that, that this can be, this can go get out of hand? But we have had this for quite some time. But suddenly, because of what has happened in Punjab and that the person who has been claiming to, all kinds of things, that must have triggered some of these things. And it's very deliberate. It's not that this cannot happen overnight just because a few Khalistanis decide that I have to do this. This is organized, this is funded by the local Khalistanis or other influential groups, people with
and some
money.
External powers.
And I wouldn't discount the role of the local government agencies also. As I said, it's okay, let the Indians feel the heat a bit, that kind of thing. It's there. I mean, let's not feel shy about saying it. It's very much there. Are they signaling to India something? Although they must factor in the cost of doing so. They may have or they may not have, because India is not going to take this lightly. And India will react in some form or the other.
Mr. Sinha, do you also agree that the host governments have abdicated their responsibility and actually emboldened these elements?
There is no doubt that the UK government abdicated its responsibility cast upon it by the Vienna Convention, at least on 19th March. As the Vienna Convention, Article 22, requires and lays down that mission premises are inviolable, security is inviolable, they were required to provide security, and they did not come to the mission till the time the crowd had dispersed. They were there for around 20 to 30 minutes. And these people, one of them went up. I'm sure that information must have been communicated to the local police station. And when they came there, only after the people had dispersed. And their communique says that nobody was injured, officials were present, windows of High Commission were damaged, and when we reached, the people had dispersed. We apprehended one person, inquiry is going on. A simple, bland statement. They are perhaps, I'm sure that the UK government authorities are well aware of the history of Khalistan movement in India and our sensitivity to the activities of such residual fringe elements. The UK itself has passed through a long phase of rebellion. IRA worked and operated for several decades, giving permission to such elements, Khalistani supporter elements, to demonstrate touches a raw nerve with India.
Good point. Now, Ambassador Chakravarty, very often these governments take the pretext of free speech in allowing these protests to take place outside our diplomatic premises. But we are not talking about peaceful protests. We are talking about physical attacks, intimidation, desecration of our national symbols. So what should India do to ensure that such attacks are not repeated?
Well, India will have to send a very strong message. Apart from protesting, we will have to find ways of sending messages to these countries that you can't get away with it, that you have to pay a cost for this. And that cost has to be, I do not know what it will be, but then the government will have to decide. That cost can be in any form. So I think this is important for India to take a very strong stand on this. Nobody is objecting to peaceful demonstration. That is not the point here. But you cannot hide behind that. The point about the demonstration, at least in the UK case, is that they knew very well. Because the UK government, the local mayor or whoever, the local government, you have to take permission to demonstrate. So they must have known, they must have automatically informed the local police, etc., who simply ignored it. I think it was a failure of communication or failure of command or something like that. I mean, you can give them permission to demonstrate. Why not in front of the Buckingham Palace or 10 Downing Street?
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Sinha, apart from physical security, our embassies and establishments are also vulnerable to cyber attacks and other unconventional threats. What are these threats and how do we deal with them?
Cyber threats have emerged as a very serious challenge to not only to the missions, but almost all the important government offices which have vital and sensitive information. Earlier, the espionage activities could involve human assets, deployment of technical gadgets, electronic surveillance measures, monitoring of communication channels. Today, most of the espionage attacks are being carried out through cyber attacks. And cyber espionage is the dominant mode of collecting information. I will not go into what all technical devices which are being used, but the fact is that it is a serious challenge. And our Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has issued cyber security guidelines, which are being observed, followed by different ministries, including MEA. We have ensured, and when I was there, it was being followed, and MEA had also established its own guidelines for cyber security. Now, the basic feature is that the basic practice to avoid such attacks is that insulate the computer having vital information from internet. You can have an intranet, but none of the nodes of the intranet should be connected to internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chakravarty and Mr. Sinha, for these insights. It is clear that the primary responsibility for ensuring the safety and security of Indian diplomatic premises rests with the host governments. Given the repeated instances of vandalism at our embassies and consulates, India has emphasized that the concerned governments must abide by their obligations under the Vienna Convention. Because the security of diplomatic premises is not just a technical issue, it is an essential prerequisite for the conduct of diplomacy. That is all I have for you in this edition of Diplomatic Dispatch. Till we meet again next week, take care and goodbye.